Welcome back to Game on Talk, the last talk of the week. I could say the best for last, but the whole week was great. So it's like we're going to end with a highlight, and that's awesome. Welcome, everybody, again. Thank you for following us throughout the whole week. Before we start, I would like to one more time introduce myself. I'm Peri Toledo, responsible for Game On Meet Sweden and all working with the game developers here in the region. And these talks are connected with NTI Gymnasiet, so I wanted to thank them and Jung Rose for giving us the opportunity to do these talks. But today we have a lot to talk about, so I'm not gonna be using much of the time introducing. I would like to, without further ado, to introduce you to Mo and Markus on stage. This is a fireside chat, so you're gonna have to hear me for an hour, and I'm really sorry about it. But I promise that I won't talk too much and I will let them talk more than me. So to start, hi Mo and Markus, and if you would kindly introduce yourselves, and then we can start our chit chat.
Hello, first of all, Markus, you wanted to start or?
No, please go ahead.
Okay. First of all, thanks a lot for having us. Good to see you again, Patty. My name is Mo Fadl. I'm with Lahza Games since nearly a year when we founded it. I'm in the industry since 17 plus years, started early days, end of 2004 at Blizzard for a small niche game called World of Warcraft to launch it there. We have made some amazing experience throughout this time, going from, hey, it's going to be a niche game, small audiences, to manually installing servers by hand in Frankfurt, driving from Paris to get this done with Markus and some others early days. After a few years at Blizzard, I had a chance to join Changyu in China, several years. We can talk about more in detail throughout this hour. Then NCSoft in Korea, where I helped as well building the Nordic or like the Western market. Moved over straight away after a year to Brighton for NCSoft, leading the European team, learning a lot, going from different products to different business models over these years. And 2011 had a chance to join again the old Blizzard crew with the president of Blizzard Europe poking us, building an international team for wargaming, a small Belarusian company at this time, World of Tanks, a small game really at this time, saying, hey guys, how about we do the same we did in the past? 6 years later, 6.5 years later, I left wargaming after what we wanted to achieve, a lot of learnings, and joined Riot Games, a passion game because I played since 2009, a lot of contacts with the Riot team, a lot of friends. It's a small industry, as you all know. It's a very small industry, and was an opportunity to go work with a super talented team on games which I really, really like to play a lot, competitive myself. Joined there as head of esports and then head of publishing within Europe. 2.5 years preparing multi-product approach for Riot, and now I'm with Lahza, and we can talk about this a bit later on.
Okay.
Yeah, so hi, thanks again, Patty, for inviting us. My name is Markus. I am with Lahza Games also since we founded it in July last year. For the last, well, what is it now, 16 years? Well, a little bit over 16 years I've been in the gaming industry, also starting with Blizzard Entertainment, as Mo mentioned, in 2004, late 2004. And then I stayed with Blizzard for 7.5 years, about 7 years, and then joined Wargaming. I started my career in video games in customer service. And then started in Europe for the European customer service team for Wargaming as their director, and then took over more responsibilities around community and esports by heading the customer relations team, and then took over the European publishing. Was president for Wargaming Europe for 3 years, and then switched to the global team, and was for the last 3.5 years the global head of publishing for Wargaming. And last year, well, actually already in 2019, Mo has kind of started to talk to me about, let's do something together. We always wanted to kind of start a business together, and he had finally an idea that I could get behind. Now, since July last year, we have started our own company.
Great. You guys touched on that a little bit, but could you tell us how you started your career in games? How did you get your first opportunity working with games?
Markus, you want to start?
Yeah, I can go first if you want. So for me, it was I was always passionate about computer games from early childhood on, but I grew up in a region where there was no game developers, no game companies overall. So it wasn't really a career path that was immediately available to me to be exposed to in my direct environment. So after school, I kind of founded my first company in the area of web development, and these were the early 2000s, just before the dot-com bubble burst. We made some good progress early on, but then also had a very spectacular crash of that company. Then now in 2003, end of 2003, beginning of 2004, was kind of looking around and reorienting myself, kind of trying to figure out with my skill set, where can I enter the gaming industry? Because I always wanted to work with games and I was passionate about games since my childhood. So I was looking around and I found it's not, at that time at least, it wasn't very obvious what the career path would be. For my qualifications and background, I wasn't really sure what area of gaming I could easily join in. So I literally picked the lowest possible entry job that I could get to get into the industry, which was a customer service rep. Or back then we were called game masters. Nowadays all a bit more professionalized. So I started as a game master at Blizzard Entertainment, and then started building my career from there.
Sorry for the laugh. I just laughed because Game Masters reminded me of those people with the jacket of in the time of Atari that had the manual with all the games. Like, what is the? How do I pass this? Immediately, that was the title at the time. That was really cool. Sorry.
That's very accurate because it was very much the same for us as well. For myself, it's a similar story. The thing is, I have to go a bit further because I'm a mix German, Egyptian, born in Germany, mother's German, grew up in Germany, but on the countryside in Germany. And as a mix in German countryside in the early 80s, they had two ways. You go to the soccer club, play football and drink, or you play computer games. And as a half Arab, there was always like a bit like, I don't really fit in. People, I have a lot of friends, but I realized quite fast, early days, online. I don't know if you know Meridian 59. It's one of the one of the very early games. Starting playing, and Ultima Online, the alpha version, even when we have alpha testing, Atlantic server. I was 16, I believe, and suddenly I found a home. I found a community. I never forget Kelly, 36-year-old family father from US, taught me English, gave me a feeling of friendship I never had. Like really, it was a group community. And this started there, my gaming world. It started a friendship community, hardcore gamer turned out to be at this time already for myself. And I knew that I wanted to create the same feeling, what I received, the feeling of I connect, I have my friendships, no matter, I have my circle of trust, my community, my friends always with me. And it doesn't matter how you look, what your name is, what your religion, no one gave a shit. They cared if you could mine the iron, you would say overnight you would mine, so they can build katanas for the next day. You know, this was, so I studied medicine informatics, but then Blizzard opened up the same and said, hey, we're looking for people joining, building something in customer service community. Early days, there was nothing. And you can imagine my father was very happy. He came from Egypt to Germany, and his son, and after right away, you know what? I dropped my medicine informatics to join a gaming company. So I applied to those four, I luckily got in right away. And this is for me where I said, hey, this is like-minded people. We created, my goal was from day one, I wanted to meet Lord British, Ultima Online. And luckily in the end, I worked with him in on tabula rasa. Everyone who knows industry know what happened to tabula rasa. Nevertheless, but the goal was achieved. But then this is for me how I started industry, with a lot of passion and coming from a very different approach to connect myself to things which are relevant for me, and wanted to replicate this feeling and the opportunity for the rest of the next generations to come.
Nice. Was it a nice, like an easy transition for you? Like, was gaming always your first choice, or did you feel the pressure to do something else at that time?
At this time it was very different, because at this time it was naturally the family, friends, everyone was like asking, are you for real? You want to be in German we say Kellerkind. It means
basement kid.
A basement child. You want to be a basement child your whole life, just playing computer games. You know, this was a perception. You do a hobby for your life. This was at this time, because you drop out studies, you drop out, you leave Germany. I left Germany out of the world to somewhere else. And naturally, this was not an easy transition, but mainly because of the social or pressure from friends and family at this time, at least for me. Markus may have a different experience.
Well, for me, as I mentioned, I kind of I always was interested in computer games in the early 90s and all the way up to 2000. Before I founded my company, I was also developing computer games myself. But I never really, as I mentioned, like I had no community that in the area where I grew up, also like rural Germany, center of Germany, pretty much. There was no like-minded people that I could connect with or that I had an exchange with on the development side. So in order to make this a business, it wasn't really an opportunity at the time. But I was always kind of keen to get into this field. So to the question, was it always my first choice? Yes. Was it always the thing that I then did? No. So I tried other things before I actually went into the field of computer games. But to the point of kind of how do you approach how do you get into it? That's I think has changed quite a bit from back in the days when we were asking ourselves that question. Because yes, I had the same situation as most. Like my family was always asking, like, "Are you crazy? I mean, are you not taking your life serious? I mean, you need to earn money and you need to kind of become part of the society. And how do you do that when you're playing games all day?" Because nobody understood at the time where gaming is going and what kind of industry it's going to be. Now, obviously, today the world looks a little bit different. First of all, the next generation of children has had parents which were gamers. So now people look at this in a very different way. Also, the industry has been growing for with double-digit numbers for the last 20 years. So effectively, it's a growth market and continues to be a growth market. It's overtaken Hollywood movie production in terms of revenue on a global scale in the last 2 years. So we are seeing this becoming an industry that becomes extremely relevant for people to plan careers in. So I believe, I mean, this is obviously not first-hand experience, but I believe it's much easier today to explain to your parents, I want to pursue a career in computer games. When you are, well, ideally they still want you to finish your studies, but it's not as crazy as it used to be in the early 2000s or in the 90s to go into that field.
Yeah, we're gonna go to past, present, and future. So, but it's kind of funny to see that what you guys are describing. Then it's very similar to how parents see esports nowadays. Like, yes, you can make money off playing. But anyway, we're gonna get there. How were the game development processes back then? Did it change a lot in the last 15 years? And what do you think are the key points that changed in all of that?
So if I take a stab at that, so both of us, we are not coming with a big development background. We are mostly coming from the publishing side, but obviously having worked in multiple companies and being very close to the development teams, there's a couple of fundamental changes over the last 15 years that have happened. So first, there has been a general shift away from premium games to free-to-play games. There has been a shift from box games to online games. So all of those things have or present different challenges and different, both on the technological side as well as on the process side. On the technological side, it's more and more things happen online. So whether it's digital right management, or whether it's simply matchmaking and bringing people together, it all happens online today, whereas 15 years ago, a lot of things were still happening offline. The second thing that has changed quite dramatically, as I mentioned, is processes. So the way how development teams develop has also been becoming much more agile, has become much more like Scrum methodology being applied, and a much more rapid response to user feedback after testing. So the feedback loop between community feedback and development process has become much more intertwined than it used to be. So yeah, technology has progressed significantly. New platforms have opened up. Mobile games have not been really around 15 years ago. They've only been really around since 2007, 2008. Like in what we call today mobile games. And if you really look into mobile games becoming big, it's only over the last 10 years. But that market is growing rapidly, and there's a lot of games coming out. So I think the complexity has increased in certain fields, and has and the entry barriers have been lowered in so many ways for especially mobile development, that compared to where the entry barriers were 15 years ago, I think today it's much easier to get a game out. But then again, if you want to develop a large game, the complexity of dealing with multiple servers and online data warehouses and distributed warehouses, all of that has obviously increased in complexity. So it has changed in many, many ways, and it's an ever-changing process. But anyone who is in development or is in technology is used to this kind of pace, which has been obviously rapid over the last 2 decades.
And add this one, Mark, as well, I agree with Markus. In the past, it was for development, especially, it was a different landscape completely. Developers had not the strong market competition in early days. In the past, you had an idea, like today, you developed it and you went out. The landscape was very empty in regards of products coming to market, about genres being getting new products in. So it was easier in the past to leave a mark on the landscape, to here I am, my game, get some noise, get some community followership. There's so many hardcore games. And if you look today as well, all big games, the franchise games, they started 15 years ago, plus minus, you know, and they just repeat what they did. If it's no matter which kind of platform they're on, this is how it happened. Today's world, it looks very, very different in regards like 20 years ago. You have a lot of publishers being now powerhouses. Publishers trying to replicate games like the secret sauce. They look at data and market and shares and opportunities, and so many games being thrown in the garbage in the publisher structure with their own studios who never make it to market because they're built around an opportunity they believe. And the smaller studios, or the small 1-2 man ladies garage teams, which we call them, you know, they're sitting in a small group building something small, indie games. They compete against a crazy amount of games which come down every day. The good thing, still, which sounds horrible for a now indie developer, the good thing is the big publishers know, and the big studios know, they cannot replicate success like this. It doesn't work. It's way cheaper, and there's something, Tencent is a beautiful example. They just go out and seed money everywhere as early as they can. They hear something, see something, naturally there it's always the key to be heard or be seen. This is the hardest thing for a lot of indie studios, to actually get on the radar for 1 second, because then suddenly they come down and say, hey, we want to buy 10% of your company now, and with the right to buy more in future. They make like this, and this is something which becomes more and more custom for all big publishers to go down this road, which is a good thing. The hard thing is to be seen.
Yeah, one thing that I wanted you guys to comment as well is that I can have an impression that 15 years ago, if you put a game out and you made a mistake, you had a forgiveness level that was higher. So you could go out, something could go wrong, but the audience would, because it wasn't as crowded and as competitive as it is now. At a lot of times you had, well, I would use Riot as an example, like they had servers going down and problems with League of Legends in the beginning, and the audience would still forgive. You could go and say, here, we're gonna give you this much in-app articles and forgive us. Nowadays, I have a feeling that if you make the same mistake, unless you already have a game that has a good audience and it's in the market and has some noise, if you are brand new and put a game out and make a mistake like that, that's it. Like you don't, it's hard, like it doesn't mean that you won't get a second chance, but I think it's harder to get second chances because of the noise.
It is hard. You're right. You're correct in certain levels. It's come down to community. If they connect to your game, and you're right on this one. If you look at Blizzard, I'm a hardcore Blizzard fan. Played Warcraft since the beginning. Still play every expansion for at least 2-3 months. Arena, and there are times where they do bad things. Feeling for the player. I know where they're coming from, but when you play it, you're upset But the next expansion, we all gonna jump again. It's because there's a lot of the passion. Other games which don't have this connection for the audience, for the players, have a way harder time. And there are reasons the Battle Royale genre had a lot of them coming with great games. I don't want to name any companies or any products, but beautiful looking, but they didn't follow up on certain regards, or didn't deliver on certain points, which the audience just moved on within seconds. And this is something which becomes like a circle of death in regards of, because if this happens naturally as a studio, you're worried, hey, how can we build it? How do you start with community early days to make them part of it? But how can you scale up then? If you don't go out, but if you go out and make a mistake, you burn. So I can say in this regards, it's very different today than 15 years ago, at least from my perspective. And maybe Markus, because I'm like,
yeah, Markus was like, no, he doesn't agree with me at all. So go for it, Markus.
Well, I'm not disagreeing completely, but I would like to put another kind of angle on this observation. So I believe it's very difficult to do your second game in a bad way. So if you are Riot, let's say, and you have had a success with League of Legends, and you did get away with some early childhood problems of the first game, but you got successful, then your second game is going to immediately receive a lot of your already acquired audience to try out that game, and the amount of errors that you are allowed to do at that stage is much less, because effectively you have a lot more press looking at you, you have a lot of the community looking at you, and obviously the way that the communication happens today through Twitter and all of the community channels that happen out there, Reddit and whatnot. Information gets out very fast, and people get upset and passionately upset about things very quickly. Now, on the flip side, if you are a new company coming out with a new game, but you are doing it in the right way, building a community early, have a good alpha tester community that builds into the beta community and then into the launch community, then usually you actually do still get away with a lot of childhood diseases or childhood problems that a game may have, whether it's server stability or things like that. Now, if you are an EA or if you are an Activision Blizzard and you are coming out there and you are launching a AAA title, but you are not putting up the right amount of servers so that people are ending up in queues and everything crashes, you are not getting the same leeway as if a small studio out of Serbia or Sweden or Germany comes up and starts a new game and is actually itself really overwhelmed with the success that they are having, if they're having success. So I would say it's while it's true that it's more difficult, especially in the space that Mo was describing. Like if you are trying to be playing AAA in the battle royale area where everyone wanted to go in 2019, 2018, 2019. then yeah, you are going to be judged by are you feature complete, are your server stable, is your matchmaking working, and if any of those are failing, people are moving on because there's 15 other titles coming out. So that's kind of how I would put a little bit of a different angle on it. I think if you are a small company starting with a new product and you're doing it in the right way, and you're not like, if you are trying to push yourself to be AAA before you are, then you are obviously going to be exposed to that expectation as well. But if you are starting low and you are building organically and naturally, then usually you don't have this harsh criticism that a company like Riot would have had if they, well, Blizzard did face, for example, with Diablo releases and things like that. So.
Very true. Before we go for present, I have one last question, which is, what were the hot topics back then, and how, and also we'll combine to how was the cultural importance of games in that time? Because we're going to touch a lot of the hot topics now and things that developers should get in mind for us to paint a picture how it was there. How was it 15 years ago, so we can understand the differences for people that weren't game developers then?
Sorry, within the industry or within the audience? What would you like?
Oh, let's start with within the industry.
I would say, from my perspective, at least, the hardest thing, especially when I moved out of Blizzard and moved to the East and back to the West, the mentality around retail compared to games as a service, compared to free to play, which started at this time as well. And you could see the dinosaurs. We are now dinosaurs in the industry. The ones before us, you know what you know best, and they say, this is how you do it. This is how you do marketing. This is how you do development. This is a retail. And this is suddenly you face that often, and this is happening today as well, the same, because now we're saying, no, this is how you do it. And the next generation, the way smarter and more connected to today's generation, tells us, no, guys, what the hell are you talking about? So you always have like this layer above by hierarchy default often, especially in big companies, which are there for reasons because they were early days. So I would say it's but it's happened everywhere, not only in gaming, in technology, any industry, I believe. But gaming faced it. That was a big surprise because gaming was normally always very open for me. It was very forward-looking. It was like ahead of the time compared to the rest of, at least for myself, for the society, how they behaved in industries. But then you see certain key elements when you get to a certain level, which is reflected in constraints and hold back and lead often, sadly, to wrong decisions, which impact the majority of teams or studios. When we talked about, example, tabula rasa and stuff like this. So there were learnings, which at least in the past 15 years, for me, internal, were one of the hardest.
Nice. Yeah. I would maybe only add that 15 years ago, the industry was much smaller. So there was less money flowing around, less investment capital going around, and there was a lot more pioneering and a lot more kind of startup mentality present in many of the companies. Now, I only worked for two companies, like two large companies in the gaming space over the last 15 years, but I started in both of them when they were actually fairly small. I mean, Blizzard had a number of games on the market with all of the Warcraft series, with StarCraft 1 and Diablo 1 and 2. So they were a known known developer at the time, which usually used third-party publishing. But it was still a small company compared to what it is today, and especially what it was during the height of World of Warcraft. And the way that things change when companies become larger and the industry overall grew quite dramatically is that corporate structures come in more and more, and investment and well, bankers come into the business field, which obviously we need them today, and they are needed with this type of investment that is flowing into game companies. But it did change a little bit the landscape from the early founding days and startup mentality to what gaming has become, at least in the large corporations today. it became a lot more professional, which is the good side, but it also lost some of the early passion that was there on the other side, at least for the corporations. I mean, for startup companies, it's still quite a different story. In terms of culture and social applicability, or like what was the imprint of gaming on the society overall, I think 15 years ago the average gamer was in his maybe early 20s, late teens. Today the average gamer is 34 years old. So that sets a quite a different tone in terms of how you talk with your audience, how your audience talks back to you, what kind of feedback you are getting, and also obviously you have different use patterns. So when you are talking mainly to teenagers and early 20-year-olds, you have a very different time to free time or leisure time versus work time availability. So games have changed quite dramatically, as Mo mentioned earlier. In the early days, there was a lot of hardcore games. Today, the much more casual games have a much wider spread. Also, games become much more accessible, even the hardcore games. Like if you look, well, World of Warcraft was never really a hardcore game in that sense, but accessibility to that game has become much easier over the last 15 years as the game is in the market, mainly because obviously the audience is changing. The audience doesn't have the amount of time to invest anymore because on average they are just older. Which means they have families, they have started families, they have work, that they are working. So the available time that they have for gaming is less. However, overall, the entire society spends more time on gaming today than they used to spend 15 years ago. So I think those are kind of the main themes. The average age went up. The acceptance of gaming as a choice of entertainment has gone up dramatically, whereas before it was kind of the thing for the kids. Now it's a thing that everyone does, and parents are much now parents of children that, let's say, of teenagers today, have a much better understanding of what this gaming space entails than they had 15 years ago, where it was just, I don't know anything that you are doing there, and it's all very dangerous and you shouldn't be doing it.
So you guys decided to leave just the biggest companies in the world and open your own company. What was the motivation behind that? I used all the prepositions to get behind it. Okay, go for it.
It's a tricky question because it goes back, for me at least, for early days, why I joined the industry the first time, to change something, actually create something, ideally the feeling I had, what I was offered by the games and by the community, to the next generation. And early days, I told Markus, we had a lot of discussions over the last nearly 20 years around about differences, excluded groups in gaming as well. Do we do the right thing in the industry with our players? Are we inclusive? All this came really from us. And as a half Arab, I always saw my father's blood, my family in Egypt and in the Middle East, completely neglected. I always said, hey, we should do something. And we always said, all these years at events we went, industry, we have responsibility for our players, responsibility for the kids. Do they get the right games? How much should they play? The right content? Do we help educate as well? We have all kids ourselves now. A lot of responsibilities. And after all these years, we reach a time that we have now built a portfolio of experience and network. If we don't do it now, to actually say, okay, let's stop. Let's sit down, focus, what can we actually do? We did what we wanted to do all these years. We were so lucky. We're one of the few blessed ones, really, for us at least, saying, let's try actually to give back. Stop talking to say, we give back, responsibility, actually do it. And this is where, during my last time at Riot, the last 6 months, we were able to bring an event to Saudi Arabia, which, Saudi Arabia, I'm like, ugh. But it was the same reaction. American company, and they're like, I was born Muhammad. I changed my name from Muhammad to Morton, my mother's Jew, because of, and then I did this a few years ago, 4 checks every time I flew to the US, every time I got to double check just before entering the plane. You know, every time all this happening, and all my colleagues, when they traveled with me, they prepared themselves. They said, okay. And then they were right, because they got checked internationally as well. And then I said, hey guys, I know there are these stereotypes, but as gamers, we have to rip them apart. We never looked at this. Hell, let's do this. And Riot actually did it. They said, okay, Mo, we do the first ever publisher, AAA, go to Saudi Arabia and make a big event there. And they did it. And suddenly we saw cosplayers there. I was there the first time as well in Saudi Arabia. I was there as one of the judges for Riot. And you see cosplayers, you see players like everywhere in the world, no difference. And this was for me, the switch was, okay, let's stop what we do. Let's build a company focusing on MENA in this region, bring our friends, network, colleagues, all companies, everyone we know, and say, let's double down here. There are millions of players who are like us. There is a massive market for people who are just interested in money, as Markus mentioned. We all need money. There is a crazy opportunity, the market, the blue ocean, which everyone wants, and players who want to play. And the culture is changing. So all this came together at the same time, that people started now, thanks to technology, to be open up. Suddenly dance parties there, which would never happen before, all the things happening. So this is, for me at least, was my main driver. I said, if not now, when then? I always push it out. So that was, for me, the big call why I jumped.
Yeah, so for me it was much simpler. I had Mo, who was very enthusiastic, as you can see, and he convinced me that that is the right course to spend some time on. Now, I mean, in terms of what can gaming do for enabling positive change, I think what Mo has described from his views is kind of the same thing that I'm seeing still today, what games do. When you are playing a game, it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter what gender you are, it doesn't, like, it's way more inclusive, or it can be way more inclusive. Not all communities are equally nice to each other. There's also a lot of toxicity that is something that we have to address as an industry. But by principle, since it's online and it has a layer of anonymity to it, and there's usually like-mindedness around either a gaming genre or a specific game. The type of people that you're playing with is not pre-selected by your community you're coming from, or your cultural background, or your gender, or whatever it might be. And when I look at the Middle East and the progress that we have been seeing over the last couple of years, it's going in the right direction. And I personally strongly believe that gaming can be a positive influence in bringing people together. And well, so I'm turning 40 in 15 days. So it's also when you were asking about timing, like, yes, when do you leave the big companies to start something new? Is my goal was always, before 40, I should start something myself again, because you need to have the energy and actually to see it through and bring it to the height that you want to bring it to. So for me, it was timing wise pretty much on spot when this opportunity kind of came about. But I'm primarily motivated by Mo and his enthusiasm and his vision for the region, and I bought into it. So that kind of was what motivated me to do this with them.
Yeah, I was extra curious about when we talked the first time about that, because it's a lot of the situation with a lot of people here in the region, that they have a steady job in a good company. Maybe it's not a game company, but it's a big IT company. They have a good salary. They have a passion for games, but there is always this fear of, do I take away my safety to jump on a game business? Do I take this risk? And something you commented fits right, as like, you wanted to do this jump and take this risk of starting a new company before you were 40 because of the energy. I think a lot of people here have the same feeling, like, oh, maybe now I have money enough to invest for a year to do so. You know, like it's a tricky situation for a lot of people here. So I think the insights are important for them as well.
On this one, I'd like to say, yes, it's important. It's naturally, leaving everything behind is the hardest thing, meaning especially financially. You have the best companies in the world, and they pay very generously on certain levels onwards. And then suddenly, hey, let's go back to early days where you have naturally you have a family, you have partners you're responsible to, and then you said, okay, you discuss it and said, we are willing to make this cut. Yes, we do it for a year. And the same for us. We said, we're starting now, we 2 years plan. We cut down all costs, we invested in our company, going back to the minimum on a good level, don't get me wrong. But this is a commitment we said we have to do it, otherwise we become too fat, too comfortable to never jump for a change.
Yeah. And it is different when you have family and kids, but it's really cool that you guys did it. And then on another situation, sorry, Markus, I did you want to comment something? I jumped in front of you, like. For the people that are watching, they are my friends for a very long time. I swear to God, I'm not this rude. I just know them too well. For the people that are trying to get into game industry, either starting their own company or like getting a job and go, how do you see it nowadays? Is it way more difficult than it was before, or I imagine that it's easier in some points and more difficult in others. Could you see your point of view on what is easier and what is more difficult nowadays?
So I think in principle, it's actually, it's easier to come up with a good business plan because there's a lot more use cases out there now than there were 15 years ago. So you have much larger audiences to address. You have more niches that you can start your business in this industry. Now, also the investment money that is available on the market today is much bigger than it used to be. So I wouldn't say it's easy to find money, but it's easier than it used to be. Technology, as I mentioned before, also evolved in a way that depending on what kind of game you want to do and what your background is, whether you are a good programmer or whether you are a good game designer or a aspiring good game designer, then you have multiple different tools that you can use to get over the technological entry barriers. So I would say overall it's probably easier to get started. Now, in terms of getting discovered and getting your game on the map, so to speak, that certainly is more complicated. Today, there's hundreds of games being released every week on the mobile platforms. There's still over 1,000 games released every year on PC and console. So to be outstanding and kind of be noticeable as a product, that is more difficult. So for that, I would say that there's whether it's more challenging, it's a different type of challenge. It's a different type of communication that you do today than you used to do 15 years ago. I mean, we can talk about influencers, we can talk about YouTube and on-demand video, we can talk about Twitch and streaming video. There's discovery methodology has changed quite significantly, and there's a lot of competition. But as we have always said inside the industry, there's always the game killer that comes out and the one thing that's going to ruin your business, and it never happens because effectively there's just more players coming into this field every day, and usually the tide rises all the boats. So I wouldn't be too afraid to go into the field today. I would be much less afraid than I would have been 15 years ago to start a company in this space. And well, this is obviously after having had the experiences that I had and the learnings that we had together. It's easier to say than if you're looking at it from the outside. But I think it's much less daunting today to start a gaming company than it was 15 years ago.
I agree. It's easy. Yeah, it's easier today to be transparent because as technology allows to do games quite fast. Even the engines evolved so much. So all you need in the end is have a strong, passionate idea, get a small group, 2-3 friends together and say, hey, let's start iterating. Let's create something. You prototype, you test, you fail. Good thing is if you just do this, you get experience, you get a portfolio of products to do, in the past, you needed then a publisher. You needed a AAA hit, something strong, which gave you attention. Today, you don't need this anymore because either you create, because the market is so big, a game which you love. If you love it, there will be people out there who love it too. This is the beauty about human nature. They will be. It's such a big audience now. Second, streaming platforms make the craziest game suddenly become a super hit, because I remember when I saw Faker playing this game with this hanging with a mind pickaxe, jumping around a character, which just all you had to do is climbing a mountain. I said, this is BS. What? It looks funny, but it boomed. And because suddenly the streamer picked it up, it was fun, it was hardcore, and it became, okay, then now we have Epic stores, you have Steam. Sebastian Vidal, old colleague from NCSoft, he started a company, a small development company, just trying, testing what he loves, brought his first game out on Steam, sold few thousand copies, which gave enough money, budget, to invest for the next one, and gave attention from big investors. Like suddenly they came and said, hey, we want X% of your company for X amounts. And suddenly the thing is, you can do way more faster in today's world. And there are way more tools where you can distribute your idea and game on to actually get to the point where you have success.
But then if I don't want to open my own company and I want to get a job, and I have some skills, but I don't have a portfolio. So it's part of it, you answer more, which is the technology is there, you can learn things, make the smallest game prototype, that's a portfolio thing. But are there any other advices that you would give people to say, I'm scared, I want to start, because I will tell you why I'm asking, is because when you see job applications in companies, they are so daunting. Like the things companies ask are it's so scary. It makes you feel like you will never be able to get a job in any of these things. And nowadays you don't have the same opportunity that you had before to say, hey, I'm gonna go in customer service. Even customer service is asking for more stuff than most people have. So would you have like a good advice for people on that? Even if I'm not asking for the solution, just maybe a good tip.
First of all, maybe which helps, we're always afraid. Even now, after nearly 20 years in the industry, doing what we do, I'm still afraid. I'm still afraid to jump out. It's normal. We are animals of habit. We like the security, the safety. It's something you have to just to push yourself. There is nothing safe. If there's safety and guaranteed success, everyone will do it. This is very, very simple. Even now what we do, there is fear, there's concerns, there's so many responsibilities. But saying, okay, I do it in the safest possible way, for at least for myself. They say, okay, don't throw my kids in front of a truck. No, but they eat maybe carrots for the next year. Well, you know, not in the extreme, but you make a commitment, say, okay, we go out there because we want to change something. So fear is completely normal. The thing is, a lot of job applications, and for many companies I work for, and we even created them ourselves, a lot of job descriptions, they give a frame. We want a person with 10 years experience, and I can promise you we hired people often which had like non-experience or 1 year, because they had the right mindset, the right culture fit, the right energy, you don't want a toxic asshole. Sorry to say that.
But like it's fine.
You don't.
Go for it.
Do you prefer, and a good example at Riot, we looked for a person for the Nordic team, experience in here and here, and then the young lady came along, Olya. She had no experience in this. She did something very different, but the smartness and energy and approach, and she presented things, even in the interview, challenging. Why do you do it like this? What? And we were sitting there like, holy shit. And guess what? You got the job.
But one question on that, just before I go to Markus, but one question. When you are just sending a curriculum, is there anything that people should do in the curriculum themselves that show, like if I want to show I have this drive, I really want that, what could I put in my curriculum that would make you give me the chance of the interview? I'm just asking because a lot of time the curriculum is really cold and you don't have time, like an opportunity to show off. So, for example, why did you choose to interview her? What was the thing that you saw?
To be very, it sounds horrible. Her cover letter. It sounds like the CV and cover letter, because when you have like hundreds of applications coming in, and even your talent team tried to filter, but certain ones just stand out in approach. She highlighted how she was leading raids in Lineage 2. And
Nice,
holy
yeah.
shit, this is a hardcore game. What kind of sane person would do this? You know, so it triggered something we can relate to. We say, hey, this is a person which is not like, I did this for 3 years. They say something about the personality. What is their driver? And this, at least for me personally, as a hiring manager, always is something which at least gives the attention. We say, okay, this is a disruptor in a CV, an application. Someone sent something which makes me stop and think about this person. This is what, at least for me, what you want to achieve.
Yeah, but that's a really good point. It's not about like everything that is there. It's also how you position that when you're writing. That's really good. How about you, Markus?
Yeah,
Because War Game is a different company. It was very different as well.
Well, yes and no. So I think one of the key differentiators always for choosing employees is culture fit. And the gaming culture and the culture inside gaming companies is quite different from even like your bare-bone IT company. Now, I'm not talking now the Googles and the Apples of this world, which are more akin to what we are also seeing in the gaming culture, but maybe also not. So there's also still differences, but it's if you are managing to convey in your cover letter and in the way that you're presenting yourself that you are fit for that culture and that you're passionate about this field, you are having a much bigger chance than if you're checking all the boxes on the qualifications. As Mo said, when we write these job descriptions, yes, we obviously try. I mean, there's hundreds of and thousands of applicants for positions, so you try to put some filters in to sort for the best possibilities. But on the other hand, we're also always, and I think that's true across industries, we're always asking for that. We have a nice word for that in German, the eierlegende Wollmilchsau. It's basically the egg giving wool, milk, pork or pig. So basically the one that gives you everything. And those don't exist. So you can't have 10 years experience and be open-minded. You can't have like the things that we are looking for in terms of passion and in terms of also the ability to take someone on a journey with you versus someone who is very worked into their ways. Like how do you like but still we're going to write 5 years experience or something like that, and we don't really mean it in that sense, but there's other ways in which we do mean it. So it also is heavily dependent on what type of job you're going for. I do still believe there's good entry ways for, let's say, not qualified or specifically qualified people in both customer service as well as quality assurance and some other like entry-level positions in the gaming industry. But if you're going into fields like development, design, art, then depending on how creative your job is, that should be reflected in how creative you are being in your application process. Whether you have something to show, whether it's game or not game. I mean, I've over the years, I've hired people who who have not been working on games, but have been working in animation for movies, or have been working in graphic design for web development in other areas. So it's not necessarily that you have to have 100% overlap with gaming, because not everyone, like, we are needing a lot more people than that have that background experience anyway. So we do look for people who coming from other walks of lives. But at the same time, there's always, as this entire market is growing, there's also obviously new education pathways for people to actually do have the right qualifications right off the bat. So ideally, it gets both. It gets both cross-qualified people from other industries or adjacent industries, and then a lot more young people choose to go into building a career directly into gaming. So that's kind of where we are at this moment in time.
Just one thing, Patty, just to combine everything, you have nothing to lose. If I would talk now to any any student or anyone gets an industry, even a senior, if you apply for a job, you got nothing to lose. It's a growth mentality. You want people with a growth mindset, and just dare to apply 100 times, 1,000 times. You get everything to gain and nothing to lose. I believe if this comes in as a core mentality, same for us now with our business, we have nothing to lose, everything to gain. Yes, there's fear and there's risk, but take the leap and do it over and over and over till you succeed.
True. And I knew this would happen. That if you guys had, I have like 300,000 questions, and I knew we would talk too much and we wouldn't be able to cover it, like half of it. I'm going
We knew
like,
this was going to happen.
but yeah, with us, it always happens. Like 1 hour meeting becomes 3 hour chit chat. It always goes. But I wanted to go and talk a little bit about the future. So where would you guys like to see the game industry and the game business in the next 10 years? Where do you see it going, and where would you like to see it going?
I would go now in regards of indie and development business-wise, if it would start, because I've been asked several times by studios, what should we focus on? And I would recommend anyone right now who makes games or tries to go industry, focus on the safe bet. Go on the platform, don't go for AR, VR. Yes, it's great, but the technology is not even fully developed. It can change. If you want to build the business as a first business or first game, build something or create something where you at least the highest chance of success, so you keep the lights on. When you have this, then you can explore your passion in these regards. For the future, I believe I don't want to say AR, VR, or the new technologies. I think the biggest change will be user-specific generated content in games, meaning I will have experience in my game and in my streaming and whatever I do, which are made perfectly for myself. We call this user-player journey internal in working with Markus. You want to create experience which are focusing on the player so it becomes as relevant for them as possible. And when I play, when I reach out to them as a company, to them again afterwards with contents, which is them. Hey, your players, their friends missing you. Tomorrow is this raid. Last week you participated and did this and this. Suddenly I tell a story which is relevant for the player. And I believe in the next 10 years, this becomes a key element for any kind of content to make players stick with the game, because the amount of possible games and what's it, Versuchungen in English?
Tries.
Yes,
Tries
and temptations is growing. So you will have to find new ways to bound and connect to your players. And I believe this is going to be the holy grail within the next 10 years.
Good. How about you, Markus?
It's difficult. I mean, when you ask about the telephone and how many people should be using it in 1900, there was a very low number, and the 64 kilobytes of memory will be enough for everyone forever. So I don't like to make predictions about the future, because 10 years from now I will look stupid, or by certainty. What Mo said is directionally, I think, absolutely correct. The user stories will become much more important, and the availability of users to express themselves and connect with other users will only become more important in the future. But at the same time, I do believe big moves in the industry always happen with convergence of technology. For the times of MMORPGs with World of Warcraft, it was the advent of broadband internet connection with flat rates. If that wouldn't have come together at the same time as World of Warcraft came out, then World of Warcraft would not have been as successful, because you can't play World of Warcraft on a metered connection, or at least not a lot of people can, because it's just way too expensive. The same thing when you look into mobile games and the advent of smartphones and the iPhone hype that happened. The same thing if you look into esports driven games like League of Legends and video streaming platforms becoming of age. And the technology becoming available. So the convergence of technology always with some new game concept or new idea in mechanics changes the picture. Now, when Google Glasses came out, everyone was thinking, okay, AR, VR, maybe that's the thing, because that's a convergence of technology that would have actually enabled that. Now, they were a flop. So it never happened and nothing took off on it. However, if you to look at what Niantic did with Pokemon Go, it changed quite a bit how we are looking at AR games, right? So I don't know what the next big thing is going to be, or at least, well, I have some ideas, but I'm not not at a stage where I can say I'm going to put myself out there and be judged 10 years later whether I was right or wrong. But everything is becoming more online. Everything is becoming more connected. That is a trend that is unbroken over the last 20 years, and there's nothing that will change that. This will only continue in that same direction. And there's a lot of opportunities, especially with connected play, that are yet to be discovered and explored.
I have two questions that I want to, no matter what, before we can go. I know I already exploded the time, and he is screaming at me. It's fine. One of the things is, what do you think the game business needs to change to be more inclusive and more diverse in the future? Not only the audience, but the game development environment as well. Easy question, right, Mo?
It's a tricky question because at the same time, it's now everything's driven by the audience. The audience get offended, and everyone. Then that's a good thing. It makes things happen. At the same time, it's a bad thing because just because the audience and masses mean something, and I talk about now specific MENA. There is a lot of audience vocal still in the game industry, which makes noise against it, just because of cultural differences or not looking at the players, looking at the political landscape. And I think this is something I have to just give in with Markus. I strongly believe only technology can change this. It sounds horrible. I don't have not a lot of faith in humanity, but I believe technology will help us to overcome our shortcomings. When technology brings us closer together, when it's like the basic needs are covered in this regards, and this is something in human standards and what we need to fulfill, this will change. For gaming, we have to be open. We have to be open with ourselves, and it's easy to point the finger, and we all do this. I do it so much to every other direction, but it's the best thing to do it in front of a mirror. Just do this in front of the mirror, point as much as you want, and I believe if we all start doing this, just 1%, it will change. And I think that it's not an easy progress. It's just we have to remind each other without being offended. Said, what the fuck? Are you serious? Don't do this. Or is it the right thing? Why do you ask why yourself and your colleagues and friends in the industry? I believe this is how we can at least start a dialogue and start to open up minds to hear other opinions.
Yeah, I would add two things. So on the audience side, I think it's actually an interesting story in computer games, because computer games used to have a 50-50 split between men and women. And that changed with Super Mario Kart, which just changed the way that advertisement was done, and computer games were advertised to boys more than to girls, and that led to a very strange 10 years of a divergence. However, it has already been overcome. Most of the mobile audience, most of the web game audience are women already. So I believe the user will drive the industry with a delay. So there's this delay simply by how history has brought us here. But if you make a game today that is being predominantly played by women, then it's a good idea to have women in your company. And developers understand that, and publishers understand that, because they understand their audience better. And you can develop games much better for your audience if you have that target audience work in that plays your game, also work in your company. It's, as Mo said, there's especially for the region that we are now mostly engaging with, there's a lot of talk about the politics and should you engage with that country and whatnot. But from our perspective, games are being played by humans, not by governments. So what we want to reach humans. We want to reach the players of that region. We want to reach the players all over the world, and we want to make sure that everyone has a chance to participate. So just looking at the political landscape in determining whether the players and users and humans in that country should have access to the best games or should have access to great game services. That's a bit short-sighted. I think if we want to bring people together and if we want to be inclusive and diverse, we have to engage with everyone. We don't have to engage with all governments and with all I don't know, regimes or whatever, but we have to talk to the people, and we have to bring the people into the games, because that's the only way that we are going to have a truly diverse community, whether it's with Asian players, with Middle Eastern players, European or North American and African players. Just bring them all together, and that's I think through the player community we can drive a lot more change and positive change for inclusiveness also on the development and publishing side of games.
Exactly. This is something we'd like to add. Markus brought up a brilliant point, especially because now we look to MENA, is the first market that I'm transparent where we see 81% of players, like mobile games, are female, and the audience is over 50% is under 40. So, and we had some publishers, developers, both coming to us regarding the region, asking us, can we make a game? And we said, we would love to, but the issue we face, we don't know the audience, because why do you want to, sorry to say that, why do you want to hire male developers with a mindset and try to create like a game? And they tried. We had this case scenario where they made a fashion game, and it looked like, I asked my girls and they said, I don't want to play this. It looks like a hardcore Barbie. I said, it's not like, you know, it was like this because it was created with a different mindset. I believe the market, as Markus mentioned, will change it. And MENA is a good example, which most likely will be the first globally, where you have a very heavy spending audience, the females, which all play mobile games. So the industry will adapt. They will change because we want money. Everyone wants money. So the ones who make first games, which fits this audience, where you need certain skill sets, where you need to understand the player, and who else better understands a woman, and a woman, you know, to create things. And I think the market will adapt one way or the other, by force or hopefully through human development and openness.
True. Yeah, it just reminded me that if you guys know, I like TikTok. I'm one of those people that like TikTok. And there is one TikTok that she makes fun of one thing, that she's a gamer. So every time a guy is talking to her in the game, she goes and talk like this. Oh, and what do you want? And then the moment that he disconnects and said, yeah, okay, kill that guy with the voice. And it reminds me of that there is this misconcept of what it is, games for girls, that it's like what Markus said, it's games for human beings. Everybody plays. Sweden is a good place for that, but I think worldwide we have quite a lot to learn still on that.
Absolutely.
And before we go, I just wanted to, could you guys give like a last advice? And I know people would like to ask questions, like June is looking at me like, I have questions. No, June. I promise I connect you guys. If you guys have questions afterwards, send me the questions. I will be happy to connect you. Mo and Markus are super nice people. They will talk. And you want to come and visit the company? Hey, we all want to go to Greece. Yes. Like, yes, please, we want to. And don't worry, guys, I'm going to bring them back here to talk. We're already discussing when they're going to come to Sundsvall and meet everything. So you're going to have a chance to talk to them in person. But I wanted to finish in a high tone. So would you guys give like the last words of advice for people that want to get in the business, or people that are doing that, like ready to do that leap of faith? What would be the advice that you would give? Like if you could do the ultimate advice.
Let me take the first step more because
please.
Yeah, I think I broke more.
I think for me it's super simple. I mean, I've made this jump 15 years ago for the first time, or almost 16 and a half years ago for the first time, and I never regretted it. There were hard times, there were very good times, but there was never a time to regret it, because the culture in which you are entering when you are going into gaming is so, even with all of the corporate stuff that is happening now also in this industry, it is the most passion-driven, most exciting way of combining your hobby, what you really are passionate about as a gamer, with your work. And I don't know who said that, but if you do what you like, no day actually feels like work. And that's Yes, it's daunting. Yes, one needs to always do their own risk assessment, and all of the worries are to be considered. But it's certainly worth a try. And if you want to be living in this world where you can actually say playing someone else's game is competitor research, then do it.
Awesome.
I would say it's now if you want to go in the industry either as a developer or a publisher, and more likely it's harder as a developer with own games. I would recommend build your circle, even early circle of trust smartly. Often the people make games. I saw a lot of beautiful games no one ever saw and which will die before they ever get anywhere because they got no attention, nothing. So when you build even the concept, networking is key. And networking has many layers. It can be professional networking, but as well, if you start streaming, and imagine you make your game, it's a mobile game, whatever it is, but you start streaming your game and you play it and you have 2 people watching it, 3 people, start using the tools you have to build a network, and not like old school network, say, giving out business cards. There are way more efficient ways, but it's important. You can have the best idea, but if no one knows about it, no one sees it, it will die with your passion.
But there's something really good in what you're saying. Like I hear a lot of people here saying like, oh, no, I don't want to say the idea because someone will steal it. And usually my reaction is like, no, the ideas we have by a million is the execution and the passion that you put into it that is going to make the difference. Like share it, say it out there. Nobody's going to steal it because nobody can do what you do.
Exactly. This is the thing. And if you go like this, there will be no games in the world because there are way bigger fishes always in the sea, which can replicate your game within 2-3 months if they want to, but they don't have the secret sauce. And this is something you see the difference. You always see when a game succeeds, which has no budget, but it has a secret sauce. It came from a point and it goes through. The whole player goes through experience. It's a player journey in the end. And share it, build a circle of trust, which you can ping pong around. Stream the game early. It's your game. Worst case, a big one will come and ask to buy you on day 1.
Yep. Good one. Guys, thank you very, very, very much. And there was an awesome talk. This was the last one of the week. So I wanted to thank again June and NTI Gymnasiet for the opportunity. You guys for coming here. You guys are just meeting them, but these are like the best people. They are my favorite people. They know that. It's like, yeah, okay. Markus gets red like a tomato every time I say that. But I made sure this week to bring to you guys the top. It's not necessary, not only the top people as professionals, but I mean the top people as human beings, because I think the best way to show the region here what games are about is to show you the high quality of people that work in this industry. As in any other industry in the world, you guys are going to meet a lot of assholes and a lot of bad people. But I wanted to show you this week, what does it mean when you working in game industry is that you're also going to meet like these people that are awesome, that are very open, that are come and share their heart and experience without like no strings attached, just because they want to help other people get into the industry as well. So thank you very much. It's highly appreciated. And guys, thank you for that. All the videos are going to be posted on NTI YouTube afterwards, so you can reset and watch again. Like I said, I will drag Mo and Markus here. We have already been talking that like the pandemic has to finish so they can come. Markus is looking forward to skiing. I was
not skiing, but I look forward to it. Well, thank you very much, Patty, for having us.
Yes,
thank you.
Thank you all so much. Really enjoyed it, and please feel free to reach out. Let's be this the first of many talks, and like-minded people is good to have, and let's widen the circle of trust.
Thank you. Bye, guys. Have a good weekend.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.